But one thing which I think is so prevalent nowadays is stress. Like stress in each one of our lives, like stress is a factor. It's a guest at each one of our tables.
Yeah.
And each of us is a different relationship with it. Some of it's more acute. Some of us don't even realize that we're super stressed. I don't realize I'm stressed quite a bit of the time.
Yeah.
And I just wondered, like, how do you see it crop up as a medical doctor, and how do you deal with stress in your life?
Yeah. Stress is like this huge umbrella term, I think, that can relate to so many different things. You know, people can have financial stress, they can have emotional stress, they can have physical stress. And as a doctor, it can manifest in so many different ways. When I'm in A&E, I see many people manifest their stress in chest pain. That doesn't mean they shouldn't come to A&E. It just means that there are other things I need to rule out before we settle on psychological issues being potentially one of the reasons as to why they have chest pain. Obviously, we do all the things to make sure it's not something more worrying than that. Other people, it can manifest in skin conditions. It can manifest in gastritis. It can, there's lots of physical ways.
Do you think it kind of almost the precursor is stress, and then it manifests at some weak part in our body?
Absolutely, yeah. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a weak part of your body, like you need to fix your gut or anything like that. But it's an interesting observation that I've seen of stress manifesting in many different ways. And people can probably relate to a time when you've had an immense period of stress and then suddenly you get a cold,
Or I think a lot of people can relate to that idea. The holiday, you're really, really busy. You're so busy at work, and then you go on holidays, and then I'm sick for 2 weeks of my holidays.
Yes,
I think that's a really common one.
Because you're like, there's that well-known saying, you're running off fumes. Well, you're running off cortisol. You're running off your adrenal glands firing on all cylinders, and that keeps you perked up for an amount, just amount of time. And then as soon as you take your foot off the gas, that's when you essentially reveal your immune system's vulnerabilities, and that's when you can get a common cold or whatever it might be. So I think a lot of people can relate to that, and it just that very simple, silly example reveals how intertwined our psychological mindset is to our physical body. Whether it is our immune system or our cardiovascular system or our brain health. These are all things that come together. And to answer your question about stress, absolutely. I think there's many things that we are stressed about in today's day and age, whether it be finances or emotions or whatever. I think one of the best antidotes that I've come to use personally is gratitude. And people are probably sick to death of me talking about gratitude, but I freaking love gratitude.
I'd love to hear more about it, because we haven't gone that deep into gratitude on the podcast anyway.
When my wife sometimes thinks are you going to gratitude it away, Rupy? Come on, Rupy.
Exactly. You can't pay your mortgage in painful thoughts.
I remember saying this, and I reflect on it now, and I think it was definitely the wrong way to deliver it. So it was during COVID. And I was going into hospital every day, working in A&E, helping at an ITU as part of this. We had a team called the Family Relationship Team, and we would be relaying the unfortunate sort of situation of many patients who are in ITU to their family members.
What's ITU?
ITU is intensive care.
Okay.
And the reason why is because if you think of a normal ITU environment, your family members can go and visit, you can, take care of them a little bit, put, pictures up and all that kind of stuff. Well, obviously that had to completely shut down in COVID. So they couldn't even come into the hospital, and they didn't have any direct communication with anyone about the ventilator settings or how much oxygen they were on or what drugs they were on, or, whether they were going the right way or the wrong way. And so they had to assemble a team of people who had ITU experience to relay that information back to the family members. And so pretty much every day I was breaking bad news, just constantly talking to people about how it was on a knife edge, and we had no idea about what the patient journey could have looked like and whether they were going to die or not. It was pretty harrowing having these conversations again and again, obviously more so for the families rather than myself. But I remember going back home and speaking to my wife about it, and I was like, I've never been so grateful for this period of time during COVID. For me, it was enlightening. It was a real enlightening moment in my life that made me realize a lot of things that I take for granted. And I think that was probably delivered the wrong way to her, because for her, her whole life was turned upside down. She was used to going to work, having a lifestyle, and now she's cooped up and she's someone who's quite extroverted, and she thrives with other people and seeing other people. And I was in quite a privileged position where I could still go to work, although I was doing, a big job. I was still having that interaction. But for me, I've tried to practice gratitude in every moment of my life as much as possible, because that is the pure antidote for me for stress. And there are a lot of stresses and pulls in our time today. And the ways I do it is every single day I do a gratitude exercise. I think of 3 things that I'm grateful for today. It will be the fact that I tried pak choy flour.
Yeah, it was a grab.
The fact that we had a swim in the morning. I mean, there's loads of things I've been grateful for today. We had that beautiful lunch just now where we had like 6-7 people around a table that just sort of came together, and we had great food. I'm going to be on a flight. The fact that I get to jump on a plane and go from Ireland to London, from Dublin to London, like that level of travel, that level of comfort I have, these are things that we don't really think about. The fact that we're in this room and it's like the environment is temperature controlled and we're having this wonderful conversation that's going to be shared with loads of people. These are things that we take for granted. And I guarantee you, anyone listening to this who has the privilege of working out in the gym and listening to it on AirPods, or in a car and they're driving to a place and they get to listen to this conversation, or they're with a loved one whilst they're listening to this, there is something in that moment that they should be grateful for. The fact that they can even hear this is amazing. Amazing things are happening every single second of our lives. And I love that. I absolutely love that.
Beautiful antidote to stress, because ultimately, like, gratitude is almost like a spiritual practice, because stress typically comes from we're not accepting what's happening in our lives at the moment. And to be grateful, you're almost flipping the coin. You're almost going, not only am I accepting it, I'm actually celebrating it. I'm actually embracing it. So in a way, it really is like a spiritual practice, the ability to see it from the total other side.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Like, and it's like, also it's like stress is related to not being in the present moment. Typically you're in the future,
yes,
or you're in the past, or you're not really here and now. Whereas gratitude is going, right, I'm sitting in this room. Jeez, I'm sitting in a lovely chair.
Yeah,
it's lovely and bright outside. I'm having a great chat with the lads. Like, like there's so much when you break it down to now.
I talk about this with not to blame my wife for everything, but she's really affected by the weather, right? So she's
Australian, who's used
she's
to,
Australian, exactly. So she's
weather.
used to like this fine weather and stuff. And when it's raining, it's understandable to go, oh, it's raining. Oh, it's grey. Oh, look at the weather. Oh, isn't that something to like, take the step out of your day, right? Whereas I look at that grey sky and I look at that drizzly rain that we tend to have in London with complete joy, in that we're not being overflooded. We don't live in a part of the world that is uniquely exposed to flooding because of what we're doing to the climate. We are having rain that's going to water our crops. It's going to be refreshing when I go outside. I'm going to be able to use my raincoat that's going to keep me warm and dry. All these different things. I literally think in my head, woohoo! But it's hard.
I've got a new pair of wellies, and I cannot wait to test drive them.
And honestly, it's like it's these small, silly examples that build up to a much stronger resilience when something really bad happens. So if I was to put myself in a similar situation, God forbid it never happens, where I have a serious heart condition again, I'm gonna look at that present moment through the lens of gratitude always. And if I was to go back into the point where I was being wheeled through a hospital and I was hooked up to a cardiac monitor and I was, frustrated at the fact that there's nothing wrong with me, I'm not overweight, I'm normal, why is this happening to my heart, this is unfair, all that kind of stuff that can compound in your head and lead to immense stress, I'd start to unpack it a little bit. The fact that, I'm in this bed and I'm not paying for anything. It's part of the NHS and I'm having the wonderful service from this healthcare staff. or this doctor who's actually a friend of mine, and they get to have this interaction and I get to know them uniquely, or the fact that, you know, I am going to be on this suite of drugs, and this is actually something that I wouldn't have had access to 20 years ago because these are relatively new medications. You know, all these different elements that I could potentially pick out now because of the gratitude practice of those silly examples that we were just talking about,
Building up the muscle.
that have made me a lot more resilient to stresses.
Something I
And
do
how-
with the kids. It's something I do with the kids every night.
Yeah.
We
What
do
do
it.
you do with the kids?
We do every night before we go to bed, and even May's 12, and she still does it. She's a little bit resentful of it now, but we say a prayer in Polish, and then we all have to say 5 things we're grateful for. And we've been doing it for, I don't know, maybe 6, 7, 8 years.
It's amazing.
And
That's
it was just to
amazing.
try to build that resilient muscle in them, and that to see life through the lens of,
It's
and in a
beautiful.
way you get to hear about their day. Like
Yeah,
I hear things at that prayer more about, like May typically is kind of somewhat introverted. She doesn't tell that much what's going on, but she'll say little things like, what happened there, May? Did you, what? You played basketball? Tell me about it.
Yeah.
So it ends up, sometimes the little like evening prayer gratitude can end up taking 20 minutes because there's chats and all sorts of bits, and it's real, like a moment to reflect on your day. It's
That's
really nice.
fab. That's
Yeah,
fabulous.
I
And
think
you're
so.
building that muscle, you're building that resilience, and it's doing more for them, their ability to maintain their mood than anything, you know. I mean, obviously with the exercise and nutrition, you could talk about, you know, the brain gut pathways and all that kind of stuff, but like simple acts like that, I think are like wonderful and perhaps taken for granted.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this mismatch between expectation and reality that Mo Gauda, have you spoken to Mo Gauda?
Yeah.
So, you know, I think about that formula all the time, and I always try and reframe my day such that my happiness or my resilience isn't conditional on things like the weather. It's not conditional on things going my way. It's not conditional on, you know, my flight got cancelled today, for example, and the old me would have been like freaking out, or like, you know, bloody British Airways, cancel my bloody flight, less than 12 hours. How dare they do that? You know, in my mind, it was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'm going on Ryanair now. You know, it's,
just adapt.
you know, those are little like,
Am I so blessed? I've got €200 to buy a flight home. Am I so lucky?
Yeah, exactly. It's these little moments that grace our day, that give us a chance to practice gratitude. So a negative moment for me is an opportunity to really focus in and practice gratitude. And look, I'm not perfect, right? Like I still get annoyed, you know, at little things in the house, or things that are like dirty here. I'm like, why is this happening? Or, you know, if someone sends me like a shitty email, like it still gets me, it still grates me. But I'm at the level now where it takes me a little moment, but I can step back. I can be like, something negative has been triggered in me. I wonder why that's happened. Let me smile inside about it. What can I be grateful for? And then carry on.